Hi, I'm Walter. I'm the Dutch mentor, and welcome back to the Smart Performance Podcast. S for self care, M for mindful growth, A for adaptive problem solving, R for rhythmic operations, T for a thriving community, and P for performance. Again, thank you everybody for coming back. I promise you 15 to 20 minutes of action packed, good conversation. Today, we're going to talk a little bit more about governance, about the role of the leader in that. How do I, to build a vision and a mission for the organization or even for yourself if you are trying to establish a personal brand. So stick with us, and it will be some key takeaways that you can put into play first thing tomorrow morning. I would like to welcome Michael Chaput to the show tonight. Mike, take it away and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hi. Well, first of all, thanks for the time and attention of your viewers. I've kind of got an interesting story. I started my first CEO gig when I was 24 years old. That's a little unusual, by the way. That company ended up going bankrupt when I was 28. I started my business now that I run today called Insight. We're an IT managed services provider, about 150 employees, 35 million in revenue, based in California. And so it's been a long journey, more than 25 years, a lot of experience in there, and hopefully I can share some of it with your listeners and help them avoid some of the pitfalls that I stepped into, or just thrive. Basically, that's why I'm here.
It is about a lifetime worth of experience. Well, let's dial it back to when you were 24 years old. And retrospectively, of course, the company went bankrupt. They should have hired somebody who was 44 with the experiences. But having said that, I'm sure that you learned a lot from failure, right? Even you had successes that might have been in failure, not maybe even to your fault. But tell us a little bit about what did you learn from that period of time in the role of a CEO at that age.
Well, I'm writing a book right now, and so I have some opportunity to kind of condense some ideas and some principles and that. And my first principle is basically, transcending your kind of your immature motive. So, when I think back to being like 24, like what was motivating me to be an entrepreneur, and it was something like avoiding being dominated in some hierarchical, system where because I was the youngest of five brothers, and in a divorced family with step siblings, and not wanting to be like the smallest. And the point I make in the book is something like that's not nobody cares about that. Nobody's going to follow that. Nobody cares about your immature childhood of origin stuff. And until you, as a leader, start to mature past that, gain perspective, start seeing the world a little bit more objectively, um, and then and have a more idealistic vision for people to kind of sign up to, you're going to face huge resistance as a leader. So for me, one of the things I had to learn kind of the hard way and was how to be motivated by something that was, let's say, less self-centered and more about, kind of the good that we could do for other people, and really embrace that internally. So that's like a big change, and it's kind of the mission of what I'll call it, servant leadership or something like that. And that's a big ethos at the company we have now, Insight.
Okay. So staying with that period of time is that you hit on a keyword of overcoming resistance, right? Because that's one thing that is critically important to your success. And then we can lead that into how did you build a vision after that. So early on into today, how do you overcome resistance to change that is forever evolving in any business you run?
So yeah, this is also kind of, one of the key points. So your viewers may be familiar with systems like Gino Wickman's Entrepreneur Operating System, or maybe they've heard of the one-page business plan that comes from Vern Harnish's Rockefeller Habits, or his organization Gazelles, or they have some kind of like form where they fill out 5-year goals, 1-year targets, quarterly goals, um, big, hairy, audacious goals, values. Like these are pretty much common business lexicon. And what I think is maybe missing in some of that material, and I've been through a lot of it, is like why it works. And if people don't understand why they're filling out these forms, then they become hard to troubleshoot when people are resisting them, or not breaking them. And so in short form, why they work is because your team. What makes a team? Like what's the difference between a team and a collection of individuals, or worse, a collection of factions? And what makes a team is uniting principles, things that everybody on the team agrees to and stipulates. They're the rules of the game that all players are going to essentially submit to. And that's what your vision and value stack is. It's, hey, this is our goal. It's okay to agree upon anything below that, but it's totally not okay to agree upon the main target. And if you don't agree on the main target, you're actually not part of the team. You're part of the you're part of the them, not part of the us. And so that's why you need a vision. But it's even more than that. There's some kind of animalistic stuff going on here. So I like to think of it as, when you have a goal, the goal-seeking system is the system of a predator animal. So it's like a lion trying to attack a zebra. That's kind of one way of thinking about it. And I wrote this whole paper about a pride of lions actually coordinates. They don't just attack they don't just attack the zebra herd. They coordinate which zebra to attack. And what the zebra is trying to do is trying to confuse the lion so that the lion can't loses track, and they're chasing all the zebras around. So it's the same thing. When you have a goal that everybody agrees to, it becomes much, much harder. You can triangulate it, you can circle the zebra, and then you can get your kill. It's the goal system is a predator animal system, and it works on the dopaminergic system. Like, you experience positive emotion when you see progress towards your goal, and you see negative emotion when you see entropy or distance from your goal. So if you don't have a goal, you're probably not going to have access to much positive emotion or direction. And one thing that leaders need to really think about is, when they set a target, a goal, whether that's a big, hairy, audacious goal or even a sub goal, they define the world that their team, they define the world. We see what things do, not what things are. So what I mean by that is, like, is a stump a seat? And the answer is, well, it depends on where you're at in your hike.
Mm-hmm.
If it's in the middle of the trail and you have a lot of energy, it's an obstacle to avoid. But if it's at the right spot when you're trying to take a rest and enjoy the view, then it's a seat. So we see what things are, not we don't see them objectively. We see their utility. And it's in relation to a goal. So when we define our goal, friends and foes are defined. People who are friends are people who help us to achieve the goal. Foes are people who stand in our way of the goal. So that's why it's so important. If you want community in your organization, and everybody wants community in their organization, why wouldn't they? It makes work better, it makes life better, it makes people more productive. Then what makes community? Well, it's not happy hours. It's shared ideals. It's a shared goal that creates friends. If we have opposing goals, we're foes. And it sets the foundation. So you could think in the most basic sense, as a leader, you have warring factions if you don't have uniting principles. And then you might get, oh, well, we're going to cooperate. Well, the highest level order thing would be something like collaboration. And that's where we both want the same thing. We're coming at it from different angles. We're going to trade ideas and we're going to grind it out. And that's where, that's the foundation of community. And so the leadership's goal is to paint the vision, get agreement on the vision, make sure that you manage to uniting principles. And candidly, if there are people in your organization that don't want your values and they don't want your vision, you have to exit those people from the organization because they're standing in your way.
Yeah, sometimes you either get on the bus or you get off the bus. And I use that with him. Leading with the why, or what's in it for me, is so critically important. That's why we need to take our time to do that. What you're describing is an operating system, right? And it starts with having the right people in the right roles, and then bringing people to that unified vision, and then be able to measure it and be accountable. So to dive a little deeper on the vision itself and the unified piece of it, as a boss, you can't go in and tell people this is what it is, right? Because people have a harder time following that unless they feel they're part of building that vision. So, what is your process of building a vision for whatever, for yourself, for your organization? What advice, what actionable takeaways can you tell the audience they should take in order to be able to be successful?
Well, the first thing is the vision needs to be idealistic. If it's about you, it's going to immediately foster resistance amongst anybody in the team, and you're going to make everything about everybody. You're going to it's going to break down into a bunch of self-optimizing individuals, or the prisoner's dilemma, if you know economics. So it's got to be something idealistic, and it's got to be good for all the constituents in your organization. It should be good for your cap table holders, of course, because it's not you're not playing the corporate game if it doesn't serve you'll be fired as a leader if it doesn't serve your cap table. But it's also got to be great for your employees and great for your customers. That your vision has to incorporate some idealistic win for everybody involved. And that kind of, you could think of it like, I always like to think of it as a effort in distillation. So very distilled at the top, something very idealistic, something maybe just below making the world better. Something like we're going to do something really idealistic. Okay. And you underneath that, you set like a 10-year target. Like in 10 years, this is the kind of the good we're going to do. And it's going to be very basic. And then you start breaking it down into more and more specific and actionable stuff. And, you set 5-year targets, then annual targets, then quarterly targets, and then all the way down to daily metrics. So you know exactly what has to be done on Monday in order so that in 10 years you're going to achieve your target. One way of conceptualizing it that I think is helpful is like a set. If anybody's done any construction projects or they've ever seen a set of blueprints, at the front page of the blueprint is like, what is this house going to look like from the front?
Mm-hmm.
But you can't hand that picture to any kind of construction outfit and manifest your house. So inside the blueprint, there's an enormous number of details. You have a plumbing plan, an electrical plan, you have a flooring plan, you have a landscape plan. And inside the landscape plan, for example, it has exactly what tree, what bush, and inside your plumbing, it has what fixtures are going to be on the faucet, and inside the light, it has, which kind of switches are we going to have, and which kind of lights are we going to have. And if you want a really good vision, you have to have the big picture. You have to have the master architectural plan. But it's not enough. Nobody can build that. So, and maybe you can't. Maybe you're not as a leader. Maybe you're not the equivalent of a structural architect and a civil architect. So you might need some help. And you might have other people like, hey, you might need somebody to do your finance plan for you. You should have an executive who's really good at finance and be like, hey, I know we need to get here, but I need a finance plan that's going to get us there. How much capital are we going to need? What's our profit margins have to look like? And then you might need a marketing guy to help you figure out, well, what's going to be our go-to-market? How are we going to do that? And a sales leader to help. But you need all these, operations, everything, human resources. They all have to have their own plan that all align into the top plan, just like you would have for an architectural drawing. You need to think of, if you're the leader or the CEO or something like that, you need to think of yourself as the architect. So you need to know who your other contractors are going to be, the specialty architects are going to be to do all the subplans. But if you want to build something of interest, you have to know what it looks like, and you have to be able to communicate it, and it has to be externalized. So another, thing is like, well, I know what it is in my head. Well, that's good. But if you want a lot of people to help you build it, you need to have it written out, and you need to be talking about it perpetually. So, we have these kind of rhythms where we have quarterly all hands meetings, we have quarterly town hall meetings, but it's more than that. We have a weekly executive managers meeting. We have all these ways that we cascade this information. We have one-on-ones from managers to employees, and everything that we do in our kind of gets distilled down to the level necessary. And one of the things I talk about quite frequently is you want your people to see themselves as cathedral builders, not bricklayers. No matter what their job is, they're part of constructing this cathedral, and they need to conceptualize their job as a cathedral builder. And otherwise, the act of laying bricks can get really mundane. But when they're building something really cool, really grand, really interesting, and they're part of a team that's all collaborating, the mindset about the work can change dramatically, and the quality of the work will change dramatically. They work with greater ease, more joy, and so that's what you're trying to get as a leader.
And that's exactly what you're talking about. That is the team. Right? It is a team effort when people working as such. So thank you for laying it out. It's really neat. So of course we can't forget that the customer also has something to do with that, right? You laid out nice that at the end of the day that house you're building is for somebody. The care you provide is for a patient or whoever it is. So we have to make sure that our vision meets the need of that or a gap that needs to be filled. So once you have that put into play, you have the right people, you have developed this plan. One of the most critical thing is, of course, that communication plan outward, right? To get the masses. So how do you suppose that people communicate out a plan that people can then, ask questions on and buy into, so they all can be part of that, whatever it is you're trying to build.
Yeah, well, first a note on customers. I mean, a lot of great companies, and I think the company we run at Insight is like this, unites around the customer.
Hmm.
It's kind of like, it's all that we're doing is in service to another constituency, another group of humans that we care a lot about, and that's the client. So when you unite around the customer, it's a lot, well, what? It's a much better system than when you're just trying to extract a lot from the client. Like, we're trying to make it such that we deliver so much value to the customer that they're just raving, they're fanatics. Like, and then the money will sort itself out. So if you just if you could just focus on making their experience as great as you can possibly make it with as much value as they can possibly extract from the organization you built, then that can be an aligning principle. In our value stack, we have a value that says, creating customer value is true north. Customers will pay for what they value, so that will sort itself out. It's an axiom of faith almost. Like, hey, look, if we just create value for the customer, it'll work out. And any great business, to answer your second question, is a system. Underneath the hood, it runs a set of circuitry. If it doesn't run a set of circuitry, it's not really a business. It's just a chaos. So the circuitry is essentially your daily rhythms. It's like, do your teams huddle every day, or do they meet weekly? How often do you meet with? How often does a manager meet with the employees? What do they do in that manager's meeting? How often did the executive team meet? What rhythm? What do they do in those meetings? A show like this is like way too short to try to maybe debug what rhythm is going to be good for the listener. But that's why these other systems I mentioned at the beginning, that's why the Gino Wickman's entrepreneur operating system and the vision traction organizer are so wildly popular, is because it's a short little book and it essentially gives you an operating system, some circuitry, some gears that you can install. Now there are limitations to it, of course, and but if you're not doing that, well, it's a huge win, because immediately you have some structure around how to run the business, and that you can manage from, and then you can build on and you can innovate from something rather than starting from scratch. We actually didn't use entrepreneur operating system. We used the other one I mentioned, which is the Vern Harnish's one-page business plan. He's got a book called Rockefeller Habits. We started doing Rockefeller Habits, I want to say, in 2004. Since then, Vern Harnish, the author, wrote Rockefeller Habits 2.0. He added a couple modules to the one-page business plan. And then we tried EOS, and then we use a lot of philosophy from a set of principles that's a universe of lean, if you've ever heard of lean. So
Yeah, I'm a Lean Six Sigma master black belt. So
yeah, it's like a total quality management system. So what we've done is we've tried to amalgamate, these three concepts plus a whole bunch that we've learned on the way, and we have this kind of custom operating system that's the best of all the pieces for us. But that's a lot. So like, pick one of those systems, run it for a couple years, just try to follow it as relentlessly as possible. If you're not already doing it, you'll see a lot of progress immediately. You might run into a plateau at some point in that system, but not until you've already learned a whole bunch and you've made some serious progress in your.
yeah, I love those systems, and the problem is that the integration, the time it takes to be indoctrinated, unless everybody from top to bottom, bottom to top is buying into this, and this is how you do it, not something else that you do. I was part of an organization that it was something else that they did. They spent millions of dollars, and on the end of the day, it never really delivered with it because not enough people were engaged in it. So thank you for laying this out. And I have a system called Operational Rhythm. It really has 5 components. So you laid it out very nicely. It's having the right people in the right roles, the skills, knowledge, abilities, bringing people together under that unified approach, making sure that you have meaningful measures, and that cadence of accountability of things you do every day in huddles, every week in accountability, and not later, not time than that, of more time than that, because a month is too long. And of course, taking action. So with that thought, where can we find you and learn more about what you do, Mike?
Yeah, well, first, just a comment on that. Like, I don't think there's any magic in any of the particular systems. There's a
No.
magic in discipline.
Yep.
And if you're disciplined and you commit to something, then what happens is even when you're wrong, you can start to see what's wrong. Like if you're not disciplined, you have a world of chaos and it becomes impossible to troubleshoot. You can't see exactly what's wrong. So if you start doing anything and commit to it and do it well, then the problems that will start to become more obvious about, like, oh, what's holding us back? Well, we know it's this, and now you can change it. So, get something, stick with it. Like I like all the systems that you said. Now people can find me, well, for one, I'm launching my own podcast. I haven't actually launched an episode yet, but it's on my YouTube channel. That's the Chaput Perspective. So you can see my last name there. The Chaput Perspective is my YouTube channel. I've recorded 10. I'll be dropping the first ones here in January, February. We're going through some editing process. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can follow me there. I do some thought leadership there. We have shorts showing up on both the YouTube channel. And then we're going to have the podcast is going to be proliferated wherever people find podcasts. You can also, go to our website if you're interested in learning more about what we do. We do AI, cybersecurity, IT managed services. That's at www.ensight.net. We can put that in someplace, endsight.net. So, yeah, I mean, mostly now I'm trying to get out there and get this leadership message out, and that's kind of one of the things I'm super passionate about. And so I really appreciate your time. A note to your viewers, if you made it this far and you haven't already liked and subscribed to the podcast, The Dutch Mentor, it as an influencer, it kind of is irritating to constantly have to beg people to like and subscribe and comment and all that. But it is how the internet works. It's how good content proliferates. And so let's say as a courtesy to your neighbor, if you think these ideas are good and worth doing, then forward it to them, like and subscribe to the podcast. And if you don't like this, we sure want to create, I know I want to create content that people like, and I'm positive that your podcast wants to as well. So, tell us that in the comments, what you want to see, what you want to hear from people who have been out there, and we can tailor the shows or future shows. So
Yeah, excellent. Well, listen, I love your passion. I think that we could, on the back end, where you're talking about habits, behaviors, and commitment, I think that could be a whole separate show, because that
yeah,
is, that is where real resistance come in, and some of the difficulties, right? We can lead people to water, but you can't make them drink it, and it really is. It's where the difference comes in for those people who are going to be really successful, and those who are going to be hoping to be successful someday. Mike, thank you very much for and much success on your podcast. I know that you have a lot of value you can deliver to the listeners. I can proudly say that as of tonight, we have 12,500 downloads, over 2,000 followers, and growing pretty quickly. So that means that we are adding value to somebody. And again, I love comments coming back to me. You can email me at thedutchmentor@gmail.com. Also, if you enjoyed this and you want to dive a little deeper, go to the Apple Store, download my app, The Dutch Mentor. There's lots and lots of information there. 7-day free trial. It's less than $1.50 a day. It's not about the money. It's about you actually doing something and taking meaningful action on a daily basis. So again, all the things that Mike laid out today, do something with this information. Otherwise, it will be forgotten by Monday morning. Mike, thank you very much for joining me today in conversation. And
hey,
much success.
my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for the time and the attention of your viewers. So appreciate it.
Thank you.